Okay, so the next new reel we're going to talk about from Shimano is not really a new reel, but one that has been heavily updated, and that is going to be the Bantam. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Shimano TV's YouTube page, and let's look at some, I guess, real world footage of the new Bantam, and I'm going to skip ahead to the actual reel itself. And as you can see, it looks pretty much just like the old Bantam, but with a new paint scheme. So it looks to be a darker gray. Instead of a shiny gloss finish, it looks like they went with the satiny matte finish, which personally I wish they didn't do that. So I'm going to skip along to this next section so you guys can take a better look at it. Now right there you can see that they have given it a new spool, and it looks really deep. In fact, it is indeed an MGL 3 spool. Okay, here's another better look at the reel. So unfortunately, anyone who was hoping for a Bantam DC, I don't think Shimano's ever going to make that reel, but you never know. They could release a Bantam DC at the very end of this reel's, I guess, product cycle. But it's still a handsome reel. They just changed the color and the finish, at least visually. Looks like the nut retainer is now silver, and I guess this part here, the area that's covering the gearbox, it looks like it's a lighter silver than the rest, but that just could be how the reel's angled and how the light's hitting it. But the spool tension is definitely lighter than the old reel. Here's some footage of this guy throwing a swim bait, and strangely enough, despite the high price, the Bantam is actually a very popular reel. And over in Japan, it's the reel that I see them use the most for big swim baits. So right here you see it paired up with the new line of Bantam rods that they came out with. And it looks like the major change, at least visually with the rods, is that they are going with a more silver blank, and the reel seat that used to be a silver and black two-tone finish looks to be all silver now. So it looks a lot like the TATULA Elite rods. But I seriously doubt they're going to bring the Bantam rods over to America, since we already have the X Pride, which I like better anyway. So right here you can see it doesn't look like they did a lot to the Bantam to make it, I guess, heavily updated, but I'll go over all the changes with you guys here in a second. And to do that, let's go over to Shimano Japan's website. Okay, here we go. Now let me explain why I don't like the new finish, and it's not necessarily the color, but the fact that it's a satin matte finish. Now in my experience with all the reels I have, if you take two of the exact same reel and you give one reel a shiny glossy finish and you give the other reel a matte satin finish, the reel that has the matte satin finish is going to feel bigger in your hand, at least from my experience. But let's take a closer look here. It looks like the brake cover has been changed. Now it's a black color. It doesn't look like it's got the satin finish, and they've removed some material down here at the bottom. And honestly, looking at this, I wish they would have made the entire reel this dark black finish. That would have been really badass. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be two-tone for the Bantam. So other than the color change, let's go over all the important updates that the Bantam got. Now, the first key update is going to be switching over to the thinner Magnum Light 3 spool. So you can see here they modified the inside of the frame to accept the thinner spool, which is going to be 19 millimeters wide now instead of 22, but also to keep that, I guess, 150 line capacity. The spool has grown by 1 millimeter in diameter, so instead of a 34 millimeter spool, it is now a 35 millimeter spool. Here we go. Spool diameter width 35 by 19. So they're claiming that with this new MGL spool, the casting is going to be very similar to the 2019 Antares, which in my opinion is my best casting Shimano reel that has the SVS Infinity brakes. So that's a bold statement for this Bantam, which is, I think, 2 levels below the Antares. But as you can see, the spool is very, very deep to keep that 150 line capacity. Now the next change is going to be the addition of the SVS Infinity 6 braking system. So this is going to be the second Shimano that uses the 6-arm SVS Infinity. Of course, the first being the CURADO MGL 150. And another improvement that I consider significant is that they claim to have moved the line guide farther forward right here. It says by making the spool larger and narrower than the previous model, compatibility with the centrifugal brakes has been improved, and by moving the line guide slightly forward, a relaxed cast feel reminiscent of 19 Antares has been obtained. Now I read somewhere that they moved it forward by like 5 or 6 millimeters, and that was from this Chinese fishing blog site right here. It says, then comes the most important thing. The most unpleasant setting of the previous generation of the Bantam reel is that the distance between the position of the outlet hole and the wire cup is too close, which leads to the formation of an included angle when the wire is out. This problem has been corrected, and the distance between the wire cup and the wire outlet has been increased by 5 to 6 millimeters, which has improved the problem. Now I brought this issue up when I did my, I guess, Bantam unboxing several years ago, that even though the line guide is a bigger cone-shaped line guide, the line guide was still too close to the spool, but they're claiming that it's been pushed forward by 5 to 6 millimeters. Now I don't know where they got this number from, but when I saw this picture, I pulled my Bantam out and tried to position it in the same angle as this picture, and indeed the line guide has moved forward a little bit. Now I'm not sure if it's 5 to 6 millimeters, but as you can see, there's still plenty of gap left for them to have pushed it out even farther. But just keep in mind, Shimano likes to keep their reels in a hierarchy, and they don't want their lower priced models out casting their more expensive ones. So since the Bantam is below the METANIUM and the Antares, I think you can understand what I'm getting at. So the last thing I want to show you guys is something that I'm particularly interested in, and that is going to be what they call Infinity Drive. And let's read about this. A new structure, Infinity Drive, which is supported by the spool shaft from inside of the pinion gear, is newly installed instead of the bearing on the spool side, which has a large rotational resistance. The rotational resistance of the gear is greatly reduced, and while achieving a lighter and more direct hoisting comfort than before, it achieves both high strength. As a bait casting reel, it is adopted following 21 Calcutta Conquest, and it is the first low profile to be equipped with Bantam. Infinity Drive that brings more comfort and strength to the Bantam with a high rigidity core solid body. This exquisite combination takes strong versatile to a new level. Now, a lot of that, doesn't make a lot of sense because we're reading the Google translation version of this explanation. But let me go down to a very interesting thing they said, if I can find it here. Well, where did it go? Here we go. Infinity drive, here's some more information. Rotational resistance is reduced by up to 60%. And that's a bold claim and a bold number. Infinity drive that challenges the impossible by changing the way of thinking. A new mechanism developed by Shimano to achieve stronger and lighter winding. So over in the spinning reel side of the world, the last few years there's been a big drive amongst the companies to lower the, resistance or inertia that it takes to get their rotors moving. So you can have what they call a quick response when you start to turn the handle of the spinning reel to when the rotor actually starts moving. So it sounds like they're trying to do this with bait casters with this infinity drive. And the best explanation I can take from this is that I think what it is, if I go up to this picture, is that I'm actually going to go down to this picture. So if you look here, the thicker section of the spool shaft where the spool pin is housed, I believe in these infinity drive spools, that section is probably bigger and shaped to fit directly into the pinion, so that the pinion is actually providing support for the spool instead of the bearing. So it kind of locks into the pinion. I'm sure they adjusted the opening of the pinion to have this bigger section of the spool shaft fit snugly. But this feature really interests me. But unfortunately, I don't think I want to buy this Bantam just to try out this infinity drive. Because while I like my Bantam, I don't love it because it is very heavy, despite being such a tiny, smooth as glass reel. I'm gonna wait until they implement the infinity drive in a lighter reel or a cheaper reel. So that's pretty much it for the updates on the Bantam. You're going to get a new spool, new brakes, line guide being moved forward. And that's significant because the heart of a reel is going to be its spool and its brake system. Now this reel is coming to America, and in fact, as you can see, it's already listed at Tackle Warehouse. They're calling it the Bantam Mgl, and the price looks to be the same at $349.99. Now, while over in Japan, there's a price increase across the board amongst all the manufacturers, it doesn't look like the Bantam is affected, at least over here in America. And in case you guys want to know, they are expecting the stock to come in March 27. But over here at Shimano Japan's webpage, I believe they're saying that the right hands are going to be released in May, and the left hands are scheduled to be released in July. So I'm not sure which is accurate. I doubt America's going to get it before Japan. And usually these release dates on Shimano Japan's website are spot on. But for all you Bantam fans out there, in my opinion, they have significantly improved this new reel, at least on paper, despite it looking like the old reel. So there we go, guys. The next reel I'm going to cover is going to be a quote-unquote new DC reel from Shimano.